Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome back to Guardians of the Republic. Uh, it's another week, and we're going to break down what's transpired since the last time we talked about what transpired. So, with me as always is Tony Hughes. How are you tonight, Tony?
I'm great, Jonathan. Good to see you.
You too. Maybe not quite as momentous as the events we talked about last week, but still a lot of ongoing things.
Yeah, always. We're in the same level of hell we were in last Tuesday or last Thursday, so we haven't descended any further, I don't think, but I don't think we've really climbed out yet either. So
Yeah. No, it's actually we're kind of like back into wallowing in the same trap we were in the early 60s. So actually, that was the statement Trump made this today that he's not afraid of a Vietnam style ground war. What part of a failure did you not get out of that, bud?
what part of 50,000 Americans killed did you not get out of that? Well, of course, now he did get 5 deferments from having to go to Vietnam, so it
Yep.
wasn't that big of a deal to him. So
Bone spurs. Yep. That's kind of interesting.
oh, my leg! Oh, it's the right leg. Oh, my other leg!
Yeah. So, and of course, they established right away that Barron's not eligible because he's too tall.
Too tall. That's right. He's too tall.
Yeah.
Too tall. I happen to think about and I haven't gone back and double checked this, but what was the name of there was a famous Dallas Cowboy player who went to the Air Force Academy. And this is going to be back probably in the 90s, 80s or 90s. Anyway, he was tall and he was technically too tall to become a pilot, but because he was famous, and I think the Air Force let him defer his service for I can't remember all the details. And if you said his name, I would know it immediately, but I just don't recall it right now. The reason I know is because I have a good friend who retired as a colonel from the Air Force,
Yeah.
and he was this guy's roommate at the academy. And he was also tall, also played football. They both played football at the academy. That's
Interesting.
why they were roommates.
I'll have to look
But
that up.
he was so renowned and so well known that the Air Force granted him a waiver to get into a cockpit because he wanted to be a pilot, and they decided it would not look good if they just had him sitting as a famous football star sitting, behind a radar screen or something like that, or pumping gas in airplanes.
Yeah.
So they waived his height requirement so he could be a pilot. So of course, Barron hasn't even tried to join, and Barron never would join.
No.
We all know that.
Well, the
None of the other sons joined either. So and I didn't serve either. So I really have nothing
well,
to
it's not
complain about
that.
there.
It's
But
just when you're talking about drafting people, it's a different story.
yeah,
We've had a all volunteer military since 73, 74.
yeah,
So but now he's talking about pulling them up. But actually the ultimate example was David Robinson, the basketball
yep,
player who was 7
that's
foot
right. The Navy,
and
Navy.
wanted to be on submarines, which, they're not the little tin cans they were during World War II, but which I've busted my head and knees touring in Alabama and other locations.
Yep,
But he still served his hitch in the Navy, at
yep,
7 foot.
yep.
So, yeah, it's all the usual, but it's just
I mean, why can't he be in the Space Force? They're not really shooting people up in the capsules,
yeah,
and you're not carrying a gun in the Space Force because even the security forces at the Space Force bases are manned by Air Force personnel.
yeah, I'm not sure, but, but it just seems that
Rules for thee, not for me.
exactly, but it just seems now that he doesn't know what's going on. This didn't turn out like he thought, and he doesn't know how to end the game, so
Well, look at this issue he's having with trying to form a coalition after the shooting started. At least in my lifetime, I'm not aware, and even in studying history, even going back to the Civil War, the South started trying to build allies in Europe, who were some of their major trading partners, so they could get
right.
weapons to fight against the Union because they recognized that they did not have an industrial base to build cannons and muskets and mini balls and the things that you have to fight a war. So even back in the 18s, the South was trying to build alliances with other countries to assist them when they went to war. Certainly with World War I and World War II, we had a lot of allies that we fought with. The Korean
Right.
War was technically the United Nations. You think about Vietnam was probably a one-off where we just sort of went in on our own.
Actually, we
But
were engaged with SEATO during Vietnam.
yeah,
Australia,
that's
New
true.
Zealand, and
Yeah, that's true.
South Korea sent troops.
That's true.
And then,
But certainly Gulf War One, Gulf War Two, there were alliances and coalitions, and of course congressional approval.
right.
Before we went in there.
Well, and actually, in its long history, Gulf War II was the first NATO military
Yep,
action ever.
that's right.
But it was,
That's right.
blew
That's
up,
right.
they blew up both towers and the Pentagon,
Yep.
and so we had been attacked.
We claim what is Article 5. We claim Article
Yep.
5 in NATO, and they
And
sent
everybody
troops.
was in agreement, About the only
And they
exception.
fought and they fought and they fought and died. And Trump has completely
Yep.
forgotten about all that as well.
Germany went into combat the first time since 1945 in
Yeah.
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't back the Iraq maneuver, but that's because, France and Germany both like, we don't see any evidence of weapons of mass destructions. If you find some, let us know, but we're not
Mhm.
helping,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so, of course, and Britain just does whatever we ask usually. But
Not this time though.
just, no,
I think that just shows how fractured Trump has made our best allies, our traditionally strongest allies, how he's fractured these relationships
really,
to
he's
where, I mean, you can't get Great Britain to go along with you. That's pretty
something's
sad.
wrong.
That's pretty sad.
It's, well, I mean, it goes back to, as I talk about constantly with people that worship Trump, ramifications. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Well, you just threatened Norway and Denmark about Greenland and possibly seizing it. I've got the most powerful military. I just could take it, and now you're
Yep.
begging for their help. What part of that
Yeah.
covered in the art of the deal?
Yeah. Yeah. If we land, well, The Art of the Deal, did you ever read it? Did you ever read the book?
No, but Trump hasn't either. So yeah,
Okay. Well, I will give you the Cliff Note, one paragraph, probably one sentence Cliff Note version of Art of the Deal. Art of the Deal is all about getting advantage over the other party and working it until they capitulate. I mean
yeah,
and that's why that's the only negotiating tactic that Trump knows. It's brute power. And as long as he's got the strength of the United States government to go and the United States of America to go to back him, then okay, well that's a great negotiating skill. I just pulverize you into submission, but there's no really negotiation there. I mean,
no,
you wind up making more enemies than you do friends. In fact, you turn friends into enemies, as we have seen with the tariffs and whatnot.
yeah.
And now this,
But
you
now,
know,
but now we need your help, and forget
yeah,
everything I
now we need your help.
or
And if you don't help us, we're gonna remember. We've got long memories.
yeah,
So it's all it again, it's the threat. And it's just not gonna get anywhere. I don't believe another country is going to put their troops, their equipment, their treasure in jeopardy over a war of choice again by one
yeah.
man. I mean, that this is
Well,
I mean, I think this is
they do have one
this
ally, Israel, who really, I think, kind of started this.
you know, and that's how, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this to the extent that some of my friends who know me watch this podcast.
Yeah.
You know, there's really no place in scripture that where Christ told Gentile Christians, let the Jewish nation do whatever they want to do.
Mhm.
I mean, there's just nothing scriptural about that. Yes, in the Old Testament, and I don't want to get into the too deep into the theological background, but okay, the children of Israel were God's chosen people, but that also didn't mean they all went to heaven. That didn't mean that they were not punished for disobedience. I mean, the Old Testament is just
Yeah.
one constant cycle of obedience, disobedience, punishment, repentance, obedience, disobedience, punishment. I mean, it's just these iterations took place over centuries, but there was and certainly God punished, to the extent that the children of Israel were being obedient to him, he certainly punished their enemies with military victories and with conquest of land and et cetera, et cetera. But when Christ came to earth, Christ was the fulfillment of all that law.
Mhm.
He did not come to change the law, he came to fulfill the law, but
Right.
that law became it became a different thing after that.
Well, as he said, I'm
Certainly.
here to I'm, here at Passover, like, I'm starting a new covenant with you. And
Exactly.
I was taught, when Christ died, there was an earthquake, and the curtain into the most holy compartment of the temple was ripped in
Ripped
2
in half. That's
and
right.
exposed the fact that they'd been lying to them forever, and the Ark of Covenant was not in there, hadn't been since 607 whenever the Babylonians took it, but that the point was at that point, yes, Jesus fulfilled the covenant. The physical descendants of Abraham were no longer God's chosen people. And when you look at the Revelation prophecies talking about a new Jerusalem, it says it comes down from heaven, not
Sure.
Haifa, you know? It,
And that is where the Ark of the Covenant is, I believe. It is in heaven because I saw New Jerusalem. I saw the Ark.
yeah.
And that's in
So,
Revelation.
yeah. So it's always baffled me forever in this country. We hate on a racial level, we hate Jews, but on a spiritual level, we feel like we have to cater to them,
Well, I think, and I'll just say as a child of the 60s, because I was born in 1959. So I was born, you know, not a long time after World War II, but certainly after World War II, certainly after Israel became a nation, after they were able to, and that was like the reward. This is like, here's what we're going to do for you, because we as the world allowed the Holocaust to take place.
Mhm.
We're going to give you back your promised land, your biblical promised land to you, and let you, and they've been successful as a nation. They have certainly fought off all the Arabs, because it is a very deep-rooted feud that goes back literally hundreds of centuries and probably always will.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, and while on one hand, I can see that we should let, I mean, Israel is a democracy, and as the leader of the free world, we should be that banner carrier for democracies in the entire world. We saw what happened with Germany. We saw what happened with the Soviet Union. We should be there at the forefront to help democracies protect their democracy. That's why I was always personally favor of our involvement with Ukraine, because Ukraine is a democracy. Is it a perfect democracy? No. Hey, we're not a perfect
No.
democracy. And as they say, democracy is the worst kind of government except for all the others. So protecting Israel to me is more of a protecting democracy, not so much because they're the protected children of God, because these protected children of God rejected the Savior. I mean, they may be Jewish by race, but most of them are still Jewish by faith, which means they have rejected God's
Right.
Son. They are not Christians, they're still Jews of the Jewish faith.
Well, a lot of,
So,
Southerners who lynched them would call them Christ killers.
well, and I mean, that is what, I mean, that's certainly, you go back and look at what Hitler did as far as trying to exterminate them. That was kind of
Yeah.
part of his rationale as well. Well, they murdered Christ, so therefore, but
Yeah.
that's not biblical either, because vengeance is not ours, vengeance is God's.
Right.
There will be a judgment for each one of us at some point in time in our life in the future, and we have to stand before Him and stand upon whether we've accepted His plan or not. I do believe that. I do believe there's a hell. I do believe there's punishment. That's where Satan's going to get cast one day. And not going to start getting into an evangelical speech here, but I'm just saying that I do not believe that it is incumbent upon us to do whatever Israel bids of us.
Right.
Now, Iran should not ever have a nuclear weapon. I do believe that if Iran ever got a nuclear weapon, the first one's going to go into Tel Aviv. The first one's going to go into Jerusalem, not where the Temple Mount is, where the Muslim temple is,
Yeah.
but they're gonna blow up. They would definitely have blown up Israel. But to give Israel the munitions and the technology and the intelligence for them to go fight that war, I'm all about it. Just like we did when they fought against Egypt in the war in 1967,
Mhm.
and they fought Egypt again. But now they're kind of buddies with Egypt, and
Yeah.
it seems like a lot of them, I guess, just money has kind of smoothed over a lot of the things with them being rich. It's like, well, let's don't let's don't ruin a good thing here,
One of
except for
the
the Irans and the Saddam Husseins and that group.
one of the few things Jimmy Carter did right.
Yeah, but you don't go in there and say, "Well, we're protecting Israel because they're the protected nation of God."
Right.
That is just total. There's just nothing scriptural about that in from Jesus Christ forward, because that is a new covenant. And those Jews,
Mhm.
to the extent that they maintain whatever faith they have, you know, they've got to answer to God for themselves. That's not for me to judge, but it's certainly not for our nation
Right.
to protect another nation simply because of their religious beliefs.
Exactly.
That's just wrong. That's
My
just wrong.
feelings have always kind of been the same, but like, yes, Israel is our most reliable ally in the Middle East. They are a democracy, but doesn't mean we write a blank check. You know,
Nope.
they've gotten away with
Exactly.
a lot of things that are questionable.
Yep.
I still tell people, I still believe Gaza was a land grab. Let's instead of bulldozers, let's just blow up
Oh,
all the buildings and then we'll build luxury condos.
yep.
That's what it looks like to me.
Well, you
Uh,
heard Trump even say that. We're gonna develop it. It's a real estate deal for me now.
yep, exactly. So he's already, planning for out of office. But the so just this whole everything we see looks like Trump jumped into this at the behest, of the Israelis. And again, this whole, well, there was an imminent threat. It's in the same little box as the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Well,
Uh,
it's even worse than that, though, Jonathan, because he's already gone on record saying, "Well, I had a feeling. I
yeah,
had a feeling they're going to attack us first.
right.
So I preempted their attack on us first." And I don't believe he still ever completely explained away why the nuclear program was completely obliterated back in June or whenever they did the strike, and 8 months
Yeah.
later, well, we got to stop them. We got to destroy the entire country. I
Well,
mean,
again, when he took office, not this time, but the first time, there was a treaty in place, and he just ripped it up just because it had Obama's name on it.
yeah,
All we had to do was enforce it, but no, I'm gonna rip it up, and I'm gonna have a bigger treaty with my name on it. And
yeah.
after 6 years maybe, he hasn't come close to negotiating one. So,
No, well, he's not interested in negotiating anything. He is
yeah,
only because his only negotiating skill is brute force. It's
yeah,
blunt trauma. And to the extent that he can bring his emperor-like authority as the United States president to bear on
yeah,
whoever it is he's trying to negotiate with, the bully in the schoolyard's always going to collect the kids' lunches. I
yeah,
mean, until somebody stops the bully, or there's a bigger bully. But there's no when the school bully comes in and says, "I want your lunch," there's no negotiation there.
no,
And that's all Trump's doing. That's his only, and it's what is in the art of the deal. I mean,
yeah,
it's been a long time since I read it, but I remember reading it, gosh, back when I was probably in college. And I'm like, this is the great negotiation,
Yeah,
gain an advantage and milk it until you can't milk it any further. And then you look to see how he handles other countries in the world, like China, because I do think he's tacoed several times on the tariff issues with China,
definitely.
with Putin and Russia, because I can't see that anything has gone in our favor as far as Russia's concerned. I
Well,
mean, in
actually, it's
fact,
all going in Russia's favor because,
Russia is making out like a freaking bandit right now.
exactly.
I mean, the oil that they couldn't sell, which was in place before Trump got in there,
Yeah,
now they can sell it. And oh yeah,
at
instead of getting
inflated
$60 a
prices.
barrel, they're getting $100 a barrel for it.
Exactly.
And that money is going right against the war against Ukraine.
But then, the Russians turn around and give the Iranians intel on what we're doing,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
and Trump, and there's no outrage, there's no "Don't do that," or "We're gonna."
No, Jonathan, we asked them about that and they told us they
Yeah,
weren't doing that. We'd take them at their word.
yeah, I know. Well, while we're talking about Russia, I knew Iran and Venezuela wasn't enough, so now Trump's threatening Cuba. Well, today the Russian says, "Don't do that." So,
Really? I hadn't heard that
yeah,
yet.
yeah, they're like,
Yeah, well, that'll stop that then.
yeah, 'cause, obviously, we're a Soviet satellite, the Soviet Union went away, but they're still trade partners, and it's actually, their largest source of sugar and some other agricultural products, and it's also an outlet for whatever durable goods Russians make. I never figured that part out 'cause, I always told people, "Why China and not Russia?" I'm like, "Well, Russia's 3 biggest exports are porn, mail order brides, and vodka. Where do we have a beneficial trade agreement with people like that, so but no, they're basically was saying, yeah, hands off Cuba. So nothing's
Mm.
changed in 70 years now on that issue.
I have to say about Cuba, and I have followed Cuba a little bit, mostly because of my banking career in Florida, and not so much we started doing business with Cuba, but Cuba's obviously, 80 miles from Key West. Uh, and the guy who was the head of the Florida Bankers Association is the CEO of our trade association. His parents were born in Cuba, and so and he certainly still had very negative feelings about Fidel Castro because of the torture and
Right.
the poor economic conditions that he and the harsh rule that he imposed upon his people. And honestly, I have been completely shocked that ever since, I mean, I would have thought Cuba would have fallen, as soon as Fidel Castro got sick, much less when he died. But they have somehow found a way to keep themselves afloat all these years since then. Even and Raul's the brother's gone now, so I'm not even
Yeah.
sure who even runs Cuba anymore. But
Well,
it's just, and we kind of vacillated going back. And I think was it during Obama we actually kind of opened things up with Cuba, and then I think Trump shut them back down.
because it was an
It
Obama thing, we can't do that.
Yeah,
Even went down and watched a exhibition baseball game with the Tampa Bay Rays and the Cuban All-Star team.
yeah.
I was excited about that possibility. I have the guy I met years ago, he was part of a Christian mission, but he was also an orthopedic surgeon at the Andrews Institute and Rotary Club. He came in and did a slideshow, but once a year they would go to Cuba as part of a mission, but he would do surgery that no one in Cuba could possibly do.
Mhm.
He even did Tommy John surgery on a Cuban baseball pitcher
Hmm.
and extended his career, although in Cuba, you get $50 a week in playing
Yeah,
baseball. But,
yeah.
but still, that's a lot of money for Cuba, and so he was happy with that. But he just said, like, if we normalize relations with Cuba and try to make it the tourist mecca it was before Castro, he said it's impossible. The infrastructure has not changed in that
Yeah.
time period. He said Halliburton would have to come in and completely rebuild the island before you consider tourism. But think of all that money and everything, and what else would topple that government quicker than Cuban people seeing a little prosperity?
Mhm.
So that was what
Well,
Obama
that
was.
that And
move.
that was Obama's point, let's show them a little bit what capitalism looks like, and then they'll
Yeah,
want that.
yeah, yeah,
But at
and
the
then it
same
would have
time,
fallen over.
here's the thing I'm afraid of, though, and that is that, that there's a lot of similarities between Cuba and Puerto Rico, and we have just thoroughly abused Puerto I mean, and I mean, it's a Hispanic population.
Yeah,
Spanish is the predominant language. It's a beautiful island, potential for great I mean, there are some really, really nice resorts on Puerto Rico that as there could be in Cuba, and but, going to Puerto Rico is like going to a third world nation. I
right.
mean, it is definitely the stepchild of the United States.
Well, I think the difference is Cuba was an independent nation for me, and still, I mean, it still is.
I'm just saying that people that are there, to the extent they see
Yeah,
what we do in Puerto Rico, it's like,
right.
if we become aligned with you, we're gonna be a little slightly better off, but only to the extent that people are gonna come in and take advantage of us. The power grid in Puerto Rico is horrible. The roads are terrible.
Also, I'm saying the infrastructure would have to be totally rebuilt, but that would be to their
Yeah.
benefit as well. Now,
Well, yeah, absolutely.
my dad told me that, with his dad, he passed away when I was 4, barely remember him, but he was businessman in Orlando, and he said business trips were to Cuba. In the '50s, he said that you
Yeah.
could go to Miami and get a seaplane ride to
Mhm,
Havana
mhm.
for, like,
Yeah,
$25, and
yeah,
then everything was cheaper in Havana, but it was also, at least where Americans went, a little more luxuriant. There were
yeah,
luxury hotels, the Copacabana,
yeah.
and you could entertain business partners or potential clients on the cheap,
Mhm,
but pretty.
yeah. And they're still driving those same 1950s automobiles over there too
uh,
still.
Well, and that's 50 times longer than those limbs the, Soviets gave them. Yeah,
Exactly.
but, it's like if you wanna get into nation building, why not do it on our doorstep? I mean,
Yeah.
and there's benefits to Cuba does have products we could use, especially cigars. That gets Cubans wherever I can find them, which is usually when I'm on a cruise ship in the Caribbean on
Mhm,
another island.
mhm.
But, they're still one of the world's largest sugar producers. They make all the same rum brands that we see now, like Ron Rico, except the old original factories are still there. But, instead of being let's just face it, the embargo has never worked. We never brought them to their knees. We never brought Castro down.
Yeah,
Let's do something different.
yeah,
I think American companies investing in Cuba could be a winner, but with the person in charge now, it's not gonna happen
yeah.
unless it benefited him. Nobody whispered it, "Hey, we could build a Trump Tower in Havana. I had this great idea. Let's go, let's rebuild Cuba."
Well, I remember back when Obama was the president and they opened up, and we started opening up some things to Cuba. And I remember Alex, who was the guy who was head of the Florida Bankers Association, said that, one of his dreams was that one day we would have the Florida Bankers annual conference at the brand new beachside Hilton Hotel in Havana.
Mhm.
To say Cuba is now rejoining the world. And it would be, I mean, you think about the people that have taken the long way around to get into Cuba just because it is kind of that forbidden territory for Americans to
Yeah,
travel to. And if you could open it up and you had nice places to go, especially if the cruise ship started visiting and whatnot, their tourism would just explode.
and that
It'd
would
be
be
it'd be just like on steroids.
it would the Bahamas. There's nothing we could compare it to, really,
Yeah.
because it is one of the largest islands and one of the largest populations in the Caribbean. So,
And we already have a military base there.
yeah. So it's I don't know. Like I said, when your president is a petulant child and disrupts useful processes just because he didn't start it, and he didn't get credit for it. This is what we end up with.
Well, kind of on that vein, to kind of bring it back into what we're dealing with the war and what our country is going to be experiencing economically right now.
Yeah,
it's I'm sorry, but for me, it is still just too much power for one man to control. Not only has he declared war, not only did he, of course, fortunately, the Supreme Court has reversed all this, but he imposed these ridiculous tariff taxes
Yeah.
on the American consumer, which disrupted world trade
Mm,
with everyone. And now, because of this war, this excursion, as he calls it, into Iran with the strait being shut down. Did you see the clip of Hegseth saying the strait is open for transit? It's just this the Iranians are shooting at the boats. That's the only problem. It's like, and of course that took him 15 minutes to say that.
yeah.
But it was a total word salad by a buffoon to make it sound like it's open. I mean, I guess in the sense that, there's not, I don't know, a barricade across it or something that you can't go across. But if you're getting shot at, it's not open. And that's 20% of the oil. You think about all the money that the oil companies in our country are making, because what they
Yeah.
were selling for 60, they're selling for 100 right now.
Yeah.
Just boom, just like that. That's billions and billions of dollars coming out of our pocket. And it's just because the overall demand in the world has been shrunk by 20% because of this war.
Yeah.
Who thought that? And I know our military. I know that our military told Trump, these are the risks. There's an excellent chance, and of course, who knows if the reporting is correct? I think I saw the Wall Street Journal reported that General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, had warned, and the chiefs had warned this would happen. But Trump's position was, we're going to hit Iran so hard they will surrender, they will capitulate before they ever shut down the strait. And he said,
Yeah.
how many times? When have we ever gotten it right when we come to radicalized Islamic people? We don't understand them. They do not think like us. They don't think rationally like capitalists. They are driven by something else.
Mhm.
And I don't intend to offend any of my Muslim friends, but the Ayatollahs are radical Islamics. They are murderers. They are torturers. They are they don't think like us.
And the threat of death means nothing to them
And the
because,
threat
that's their
72,
goal.
72, 72 virgins waiting for them if they martyr themselves.
Exactly.
And
Get
that's all he's done is
all his
create a bunch of
blessing.
they're just creating martyrs left and right now.
Exactly. But the point of their martyrs is they wanna take as many of our martyrs with them as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
That's it's, and you would think after well, we didn't get into foreign wars well, maybe the Barbary Coast raids in the early '80s was our first foreign excursion, but, we always miscalculate for the most part. Maybe, World War II, maybe not so much, but we
Well, we had well
miscalculate in
well we
Korea.
stayed we stayed out of it until we were actually attacked.
Yeah,
And even when we were attacked, we went to Europe before we went to the Pacific,
yeah, but,
because
yeah,
Germany was perceived as a greater threat than Japan
but
was at the time.
but there was an end game and we got there. And then you got
Yeah.
Korea where no, we fought for 3 years and we're right back where we started.
A political war. It was
Yeah,
a political war, and because
it
we were
still is technically
take on China.
yeah, well, the Korean War is still really in effect. We've just had a
Yeah.
ceasefire for all these
Yeah. It's
years.
just a ceasefire. Yeah.
And then Vietnam sent we had up to 500, 600,000 troops in that country at any given time that, cracking walnuts with sledgehammers, but there were too many walnuts and the American public got tired of it. You
Well,
know, it's
well,
just never changed.
we had politicians picking military targets, and we made the military fight with both hands tied behind their back.
Yeah,
And even though they were being supported by China and Russia, we fought a limited war, and it's limited except for the 50,000 Americans that died in it.
yeah, exactly.
And I mean, we went into Afghanistan, and we had to go get Osama bin Laden. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, no.
did we need to regime change Afghanistan? I don't know that. I mean, we could have gone in and done our thing. Once we decided he wasn't there, we could have left. We could have left
Yeah,
right then. Yes, he might have come right back. I don't know. I don't know. But I know we were in Afghanistan way too long. We left Afghanistan before the fight was still half done to go into Iraq. And that was, at the time, like everybody else, you're looking at Saddam Hussein, who's a bad guy, and you're looking at the intelligence that they had that said, yeah, he's got chemical weapons and he's prepared to use them. And okay, we need to, if we can't verify it, we need to go take him out. So, of course, it turns out he didn't have any.
no. Well,
Was
I
that
knew that
was that
then.
I mean, I don't think that was malfeasance on the part of like George Bush and Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell. I think they just got bad intel. And maybe the intel people were telling them what they thought they wanted them to hear. Gosh, that would
Well
never happen today with Donald Trump, would it?
well, I
Telling them
think
things
that's
that he wants to
exactly what
hear?
happened because all our allies except Britain, but the French and the Germans were like, "We don't see what you're seeing. We don't
Yeah,
we're not gonna send troops into this." And remember, we everybody was upset. You can't call them French fries. You can't shop at
freedom fries.
Target,
Yeah, yeah,
but in the end, they were vindicated, and I still have a MAGA person now that argues that point. I'm like, "Look, if there'd been weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, Bill O'Reilly and Ann Coulter would have dug them up with their fingernails because
yeah, for real.
they'd gone on a limb saying they were there and they weren't." So, but now, I had a feeling we were gonna be attacked. Well, how was Iran gonna attack us? I
Yeah,
mean, what,
exactly.
launch a single
But right now, well, I my pickup truck runs off diesel, and right now I'm paying $4.90 a gallon for diesel fuel.
well, it's up 350 here, so that's a
Well,
dollar more than
that's probably
blue.
that's gas. That's just
Yeah, that's
gas.
gas,
So,
yeah.
but well, I'm fixing to hit the diesel piece of it though, because
Yeah,
the truck drivers that are that are carrying our stuff across the country, they're paying that
yep.
same $5 a gallon
Well,
instead of paying 3.50. And so I mean, it's up a buck 50 a gallon.
I'm already hearing it from, restaurant owners that food prices are going up. Why?
Food
Because
prices are going up. Airline tickets are going up.
yep,
Food right now. I mean, this is the spring. Farmers out there trying to plow their fields. Gee, what do the tractors run off of? Diesel fuel. And
mhm,
yes, they buy off-road diesel, and that saves them some money, but off-road diesel still over $4 a gallon. I mean, there's the difference between the two is about 70 cents here.
yeah,
So you're going from $5 to 4.30 a gallon. It's still freaking expensive. And
definitely.
these are big tractors. As you plow the field, then you have to plant the field, and that's more tractors. And then it's going to grow. It's going to take 3 or 4 months to grow, and then it's going to be time to harvest.
Yep,
And so you start firing up a combine. That's more diesel fuel. So the farming industry heavily relied upon fuel.
mhm,
And you can't run these things on cyber trucks. They don't plug into anything. You got to have diesel fuel. And so we got food, we got transportation. I mean, we're fixing to have a massive surge of inflation. And you'll say, well, yes, it's food and energy. Those are the two most volatile. Yes, they're volatile, but it's still inflation. It's still affordability. It's still going to hit American consumers right in the pocketbook. And did Trump think this through?
no, obviously not.
Obviously not. Obviously not.
Unless he was planning on, his buddies in the oil business, profiteering because, they did raise prices before the actual cost of a barrel went up, that was documented. Okay, you can anticipate, you know, um, no, he did
Well,
not think
this has so many because you've got of course, I don't think we've talked about it necessarily. We might have talked about it on a previous episode or two ago, but the federal court, the federal judge has squashed the subpoenas for the Fed
mhm,
against Jerome Powell in that bogus criminal investigation. Although Jean Pirro has said she's going to appeal it now
mhm,
because that's not what it's not what Trump wants.
exactly.
And and then Tom Tillis has said we're not going to process Kevin Warsh's nomination until this ridiculous investigation goes away, and he's in position to block Warsh's nomination in the Senate. So that's kind of factoring into all this. Fed's got a meeting coming up, I think, next week. It's going to be interesting to see. They probably won't do anything, but would it be the hell of a note? Interest rates have gone up. The 10-year Treasury's up. Mortgage rates are up
Yeah.
because of this expectation of inflation,
Yep.
and the market is driving the interest rates up already. Even though the stock market's down, and usually that's a sign for rates to come down, but because the inflation expectations are so high, that's made interest rates go up a little bit.
Yeah.
What's the Fed going to do? I think there's this meeting and maybe one more meeting with Powell as the chairman. But also interesting is that Powell is also chairman of the Federal Open Market Committee of the Federal Reserve, and he's already been named as that chairman for the entire year. So if he decides to keep his seat, he doesn't have to resign from the Fed. He's just no
Yeah.
longer the chairman of the Federal Reserve
Right.
Board, but he will still be the chairman of the Federal Open Market Committee, which is really where the operations of the Fed in controlling interest rates actually take place. Not so much a policy making as much as the Federal Reserve Board is concerned. But Powell's still going to have his fingerprint on this. And just because Kevin Warsh comes in doesn't mean that, hey, rates are going to drop by 300 basis points like Trump wants it to. So
Yeah.
this is going to be really interesting and some really serious ramifications, I think, for the nation's economy. A lot of economists are now predicting that we'll probably dip into a little recession in the second quarter just because of this shock to the American consumer
Yeah.
at the gas tank. Because right now is spring break and summertime's coming up. And if you can't afford to drive and you can't afford to fly, so you're sitting home for vacation. What's happening to all the resorts? What's happening to the restaurants? I mean, this is all going to have a really,
It,
really big, and I'm
yeah.
telling you, Republicans should be really nervous right now, really nervous because this is people are starting to think about the midterms coming up in November, and we could be having some bad news economically by the time this election comes up.
And that's, and I mean, but to be honest too, though, this inflation didn't start with Iran. It started with stupid tariffs,
Yeah, absolutely,
It's like,
absolutely.
so, all this winning we've been doing, yeah, we're not winning. If anything,
No, we're not.
getting worse, then it's going to get much worse if things don't change. Now, there's another little interesting news story today about Trump. Is he senile or is he just a pathological or both? But like 3 different times he's gone on record and said he's spoken to one of the former presidents
Yeah,
as he supports what he did and wish he could have done it. And
yeah.
all 4 of the ones that are still alive are like, "I don't know what the hell
I
this is
talked to him.
about,"
Yeah, yeah.
unless he's having conversations with Abraham Lincoln in the bedroom there,
I heard a commentator say that maybe perhaps he hallucinated, Jimmy Carter.
or Nixon or somebody.
Well, Iran wasn't a problem for them, but the last
Well, that's
president that had a real problem with Iran was Carter.
yeah, but that's because
It's
we
probably probably the downfall of his presidency. So I can see maybe
no,
Carter
no,
coming back in
definitely.
my
I mean,
dream. But
it was by far that's because the Iranians formed a democracy, had an election, they elected a guy. The CIA went with a coup and we installed a despotic dictator. As much as we say we advocate democracy, we always put dictators in place. You had
yeah,
Somoza what was else? Dominican Republic, and you had what's his face in Cuba, and all Allende in Chile. It was so yeah. So we put this very corrupt Shah in place that the people didn't really like, and we empowered him, and so yeah, it was going to blow up in our face at some point. And Carter happened to be the guy there when it happened.
yeah.
Um, and then I don't know, but yeah, like, who was it? Peter Ducey's like, "Can we guess which president it is?" "Oh, I'm pretty sure you know it is. Somebody that likes me and I respect," and like, "Well, I don't know who fits that bill."
But that would be zero. That'd be
Yeah,
nobody.
and then,
Well,
everybody went,
we know George Bush doesn't like him
"No."
because hell, Trump was not even a Republican during George Bush's presidency.
Yeah,
He was a Democrat the whole time.
Well, he
And
got
so we
remember
know,
he was, making faces during the inauguration.
yeah, yeah. So now he carried on with Bush at Carter's funeral because
Yeah,
he sat right. I mean, he sat right next to Obama at Carter's funeral, and he hung with Obama. But Obama was kind of like you're at a party and somebody's come up to talk to you, and you don't really want to talk to them, so you're just trying to yeah,
yeah,
okay, and you're trying to like somebody please come save me. And I mean, I got that definite. That was Obama's body language the whole time that Trump was trying to engage him. And Trump is probably narcissistic enough to believe that because Obama was nice, he was not rude, that must
yeah,
mean that, you know, despite all the terrible things I've said about you and your birth certificate and your presidency, you
yeah,
must really like me. We know he didn't talk to Biden. We're
yeah,
probably pretty sure he didn't talk to Hillary, although he kind of likes Hillary now, I guess. He spoke very nicely of Hillary just before her deposition on the Epstein thing. So, and he said, and he talked about Bill, and he said, "Yeah, I think Bill gets me." Remember that? So,
well, if, Jeffrey Epstein's brother was correct, Trump got a lot of bill.
yep,
It's
won't go there
funny.
though.
Yeah, that so but I
Who
mean,
knows?
again, are you just making stuff up, or do you think HW is still alive and you talk to him, or Reagan or Carter? Who the hell are you talking about?
No, Trump throws so much shit against the wall, and
Yeah,
he knows that MAGA is just soaking it up. They just suck everything he says up. They take it at face value,
mhm,
and nobody ever tries to question what he says, what he does, because if he said it, it's true. And I can guarantee you that 99% of MAGA out there that heard what he said believed it
mhm,
without actually thinking the logic or I should say the illogic behind it.
yeah,
They just take it to be true. Nobody, he talks in such hyperbole anyway. It's nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's the greatest it's ever been.
yeah,
Everything is the absolute the best. It's always over the top. Everything Trump touches is over the top, and they believe all that crap.
yeah. So I read a book I think it came out right at the beginning of Obama's first term called The President's Club. And it talked about the relationship of former presidents with the occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, going back to Eisenhower and Truman, but how it's a club, and even no matter their ideology, they get each other because nobody else on earth can understand what being president of the United States is. So there's kind
Yeah,
of a brotherhood, for lack of a better word, but how yeah, that's why, uh, Reagan, Bush, but Clinton used Jimmy Carter as an envoy because of whatever his other failings president, he
yeah,
was a damn good negotiator.
yeah,
And then, Bill Clinton would always pick Reagan's brain and Bush's brain on things, and it would just kept going on and on. Now there's an annotated version of that book. This club wants nothing to do with the buffoon in the White House right now, and from day one. Alright, look, yeah, you might be sitting in that chair, but you don't have a clue, like, so even though
well,
Bush
I
Senior
will.
and Clinton became buddies over time, and
Yeah,
you and Michelle Obama are like buddies.
hmm,
They're always, like, hanging out at events, like, joking and everything, and it's like that they don't want anything to do with him, and he don't want anything to do with them really, but
yeah.
so
Well, I
they're
will give Donald Trump one thing. I will give this to him. We have never had a president in our history like Donald Trump,
yeah,
but that's not a good thing.
no,
You think about the good presidents we've had, and even some of the bad ones we had. They've always been known for the use of restraint. Yes, it is a very powerful position. Most presidents feel the enormity and the responsibility that goes along with that position.
mhm.
Now they all are a little narcissistic. I think you'd have to be kind of
You have to be
narcissistic
to
to
get to
think
that
that
point in life.
I alone am capable of leading this entire country of 300 plus million people. Man, that's kind of screams narcissism. You got to admit. Trump
Yeah.
takes it to a whole new level. But for now, let's just talk about the normal level of narcissism involved and wanting to be president, to believing, to look somebody in the eye to say, I am the best answer this nation has for its leadership. That's a kind of a tall that's a tall order to begin with.
Yeah.
And Trump has just taken it, he's taken that power, that thirst for power, that addiction to power to such a negative level.
And
Yeah,
it's
I
even
just hope that whoever we elect next brings it back down to the normal a normal level of power because
well,
he doesn't care. He doesn't care what the courts say. He doesn't care. You know, John Roberts today in a speech said, and he didn't name Trump by name, but he didn't have to because we all know who he's talking about.
yeah.
That the idea that you go after judges on a personal level has got to stop. Now, I mean that is the chief of the Supreme Court
Yeah.
having to make a statement like that. I mean,
The thing that I've got tried to argue with people since before he was elected the first time is like George Washington didn't really accomplish much in his 8 years except he established all the precedents for how to comport yourself as a president and then the dignity of the office. You know, there's a term for it, act presidential. There's this thing called presidential decorum. And most every president has followed it to not maybe not to the letter, but they get to the edge of the cliff and they'll stop on some things. He does nothing like that. I mean, he uses foul language in public. He says simple sentences that make no sense. He trashes people publicly. He weaponizes things just because he people didn't do what he liked. You know, and it's like, you know, the the State of the Union. I mean, he kind of like for the first 30 minutes, I think, was like, well, he's kind of maybe he's cha- nope. Nick, we're back. You know,
no,
like
no, we're
"Uh,
back. We're right back. We're
Democrats are
right back.
bad, liberals are bad. They're ruining the country. That's terrible. They're
They're
traitors."
crazy. They're crazy.
And it's like,
They're pathetic.
you know, and then there's Republicans that are just as they're rhinos, you know, and it's like he can't even complete sentences, but his worshipers gobble it up, and it's
They
like,
do. They do.
and these are people
Again,
that,
and part of it I get. I mean, I do think there's a certain level of anger in this country, especially by white people and by people who were conservative because they have because of you know and there was certainly a level of wokeness in the country and certainly a level of trying to redefine the success of our country to say, well, we're not really as good as we really have been. And we're not perfect. I mean, people need to understand we are a very imperfect nation. We're just better than all the rest of them.
mhm,
And racism is terrible. It's still around. Slavery was horrible, but it's gone. Our country abolished slavery. We've fought a civil war and lost, hundreds of thousands of people over a civil war to fight over slavery. But we won it, and that was 200 plus years ago. So to some extent, we just need to kind of get over ourselves a little bit. But I think there's that anger that facts of the population just that Trump has tapped into. And they like to see him being a bully. They like to see him calling people names. They like to see him denigrating Chuck Schumer and Gavin Newsom and
yeah,
Ilhan Omar and all the other really radical left wing Democrats that are also out of touch with the country, I think. But
yeah,
they like that. They just suck it up. It's like, yeah, it's like, and I kind of liked Rush Limbaugh, some aspects of Rush Limbaugh, but the thing that I think Rush tapped into with his audience was that he was able to say he had a platform to say things that a lot of Americans wish they could say in
mhm,
a public. Now, of course, this is before social media was as big as it is today. I think that's one reason why he was so popular. I think Trump has tapped into that, and
definitely.
so he He can name call, he can belittle, he can denigrate, he can act with zero class. And there's a group of people that like, hell yeah, give them hell, Donald Trump. We don't
Yeah.
care what you do, just go give them hell. And
Well,
that's MAGA today.
but the bad part about that is there was a similar bully in the early 1930s that did the same thing in Germany
Yeah,
because Hitler didn't
yeah.
create
Well,
anti-Semitism. He tapped into it. He didn't
yeah,
create homophobia. He tapped into it. He didn't, all those things were already there. And then also the shame of losing World War One, and the whole thing. Well, the Jews stabbed us in the back on the home front. That's why we lost.
yeah.
He tapped
Trump,
into all
Trump,
that. You know.
Trump. This week, I think it was this past weekend, sent out his PAC, his political action committee, sent out a fundraising email that used a picture of Trump in his USA ball cap at the dignified transfer of those 6
Hmm.
soldiers that we lost
Yeah, I saw
that were
that.
killed in Kuwait. And yeah, by the way, he was also selling seats to his national security briefing, which I thought was kind of unusual.
Yeah,
Very limited number of seats will get my national security briefing. Really? I mean, isn't that classified? So, but
apparently not.
that's just totally lost. Now, I had a very good friend of mine who is a Ghost Star follower on Facebook, won't mention his name, but his son was killed in Afghanistan. He called me out. I had reposted something on Facebook about when Fox News broadcast the footage of a dignified transfer from Trump's first term where
Yeah,
he was not wearing a ball cap, and not the pictures of him at the current dignified transfer wearing a cap and keeping his hat on as the flag draped transfer cases of those 6 Americans went by him. And this guy called me out and said, "Well, I think you're politicizing that." And I said, "Well, no, I'm," because he basically was saying it was fake news, number one. And I said, "No," I said, "Fox News has already acknowledged that they made a mistake. Now they're saying it was an honest mistake. Okay, take their word for it. But
yeah,
in any event," and he did come back and apologize, say, "Okay, well, I didn't know that." But at the same time, I don't think it's right because his son, he has been to Dover to a dignified transfer for his son coming off one of those airplanes. So
right.
this is a tender subject for me and for him. And
Hmm.
I was aware of that before because I know he's on my Facebook as one of my friends, and I was cognizant of that. And so then when this fundraiser came out, I reposted it and I tagged him. I said, "Are you okay with this? Because this looks like politicizing it to me." And he wrote back, "Yep." And it kind of took me aback. It's like, okay, I didn't think he was that far MAGA. And I said, "Okay, you just confused me. Are you saying this is actually okay?" And he said, "No, my sarcasm did not come through. This is terrible."
Yeah,
So, and even though he's a defender of the president, but he's now seeing the president. And of course, then when he's asked about it on Air Force One, he said, "Well, I didn't see it. I don't know anything about it. I didn't see it." It's just like when he posted the Obamas as apes. "Well, I
yeah.
didn't see it. I didn't do it." These things, and it's because he does so much other shit that nobody even thinks twice about it anymore. I mean,
No,
it hardly even causes a ripple in terms of if Obama had done that, if George Bush had done that, oh my God, it would have been a nationwide meltdown. But because it's Trump, because we've just gotten so numb to his shenanigans that nobody pays any attention to it anymore.
nope. We were joking a while back about that the right was so desperate for anything to lambast Obama about. You remember the huge scandal about him wearing a tan suit?
Yeah,
Yeah. And I like, well, wait a minute. And I pulled up two different pictures of Ronald Reagan wearing tan suits.
yeah,
So what?
yeah,
And then you're like, oh, well, he uses a teleprompter. That's just terrible. Every president since Lyndon Johnson's used a teleprompter, dude. I mean,
absolutely,
at this
absolutely.
point, you're just trying, how do I discredit the black president? That's all. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm not racist. Yes, you are, because there's no
Trump would
other.
be so, and Trump would be so much better off. He would stay on on the teleprompter. He can't stay on it though. He's
No,
got to ad
no.
lib it.
Oh, yeah. It's like I said, it was so. crazy how night and day difference the first 30 minutes of the State of the Union and then the last hour and a half or whatever of rambling went. But and I'll go back to what I've said. Donald Trump has one great superpower. That's marketing Donald Trump.
Mhm.
And I've watched it since the 80s. I watched him blow up an entire football league,
Yep.
ruin a whole bunch of businesses, and then ditch a wife and marry a mistress. But, in the '80s, he made sure he was on entertainment, on him and Ivana every night pretty much, and you think, "Well, why is
Yeah.
this millionaire?" I'm thinking he was already positioning himself way back then, and
Yep.
then, he kinda went quiet after I always call it his flush. You know, uh, "Thank my businesses, ditch my wife, marry my mistress, go quiet for a while, then come back." He did that during the early 2000s, and that same thing, everything went tanked, and so he ditched Ivanka for Melania and went quiet for again, but then he came back and then, turned a reality show into the springboard for presidency.
Mhm.
That's how badass of a
Yeah.
situation this is.
Yeah.
And the fact that there were 16 people, no, 19 people running against him in the primaries who had terrible things to say about him, but now almost every single one of them, is bowing at his feet.
Yeah.
It's
They've all bent the knee.
Yeah, I
Hey, I
know,
know we're
and
running late, but what's your prediction of the Save America Act coming up this week?
well, I'm hearing, I don't know. I've got to see what Thune's going to do. I mean, he's the leader of the majority party. He says he's not going to be bullied, but I've heard that before. And it's still, we're back to the fact that you need to read the law and realize this isn't just about showing an ID. This is about
It's way more than
disenfranchised
that.
voters. It's not much difference from the literacy test and the poll taxes, back in the early days. It's you're qualifying voting, and the Constitution doesn't allow that. So I don't know on that one. But also, I think the other prediction is when are we putting boots on the ground in Iran?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, there's a serious problem at the airports right now with TSA.
Mhm.
TSA, they're quitting. They're not showing up. The rate of absenteeism is through the roof right now with TSA people, and understandably so, they're not getting paid. And as I understand, the Democrats did put legislation on the floor to fund the Coast Guard, to fund TSA and the cybersecurity, and the Republicans blocked that because
Yeah,
it was not the entire DHS budget.
right.
Um, you know, I heard Thune talking to Brett Hume on Fox News earlier this afternoon, and he had a pretty extended interview about that. And he said that they just don't have the votes to override the filibuster. He said that right now there's a majority of Republicans that would not override the filibuster because they know that one day the Democrats will be in control, and they don't want the Democrats to pull this on them. So they're at least honoring that 60 vote margin requirement. And he doesn't, and he
Cloture.
said right now, and I mean they have started debate. They have started debate on it. I watched a little bit on C-SPAN this afternoon. So I saw a Democrat that was speaking. The guy, one of the senators from California, I think, was speaking at the time. But it is voter disenfranchisement. If you're an elderly voter and you move and you change your address and you're 70 years old, do you know where your birth if you don't have a passport, do you know where your birth certificate is? Now, how long is it gonna take you to get your birth certificate? How much is it gonna cost?
Yeah,
It is an impediment to voting. If they would if that law would change, or that proposed legislation would change to say, okay, when you register to vote the first time going forward, you must prove citizenship. I'm all for that. You must show a picture ID at the poll to vote. I'm all for that. Now,
yeah,
I think you should still have mail-in votes. I think that that just makes sense. I think that that's still, there's so many ways to get around that anyway. Well, I'm on a business trip. I'm sick. I'm traveling. Which they supposedly would still allow. Okay, I'm gonna be on a trip. I need to vote by mail. You know,
what about all
but there's still ways.
the AOI votes, all the military overseas?
Sure, all that's by mail.
They can't vote now because they're not in the country?
But it's just, and I still say it affects The lower income people worse because they rent. They tip lower income people tip lower income people tend to rent more than homeowners do. They move more than homeowners do, generally speaking. And when you're moving, it's hard to keep up with your paperwork. And if you half the nation doesn't have passports already, half the
Yeah.
voters don't have passports. So I just think it's a terrible
Well,
third. I asked ChatGPT the other day, what's what's the how many illegal voters have we caught?
mhm,
In the 2020 election, we had 100 out of what 150 billion votes. We had
yep,
100,
that influenced the
100.
election. Yep,
We had 100 people. We had about 100 in the 2020 election. And since going back to 1979, there was one news report that said we'd had 1,357 out of how many elections we've had since 1979
yeah.
that were illegal. It's a solution in search of a problem. Is what it boils down to.
Well, and I mean,
And
but
it's feeding us. I lost the 2020 election because of voter fraud. Fraud.
it's also it's rigging the vote because it, like you said,
Yeah,
it's targeting people who typically vote Democratic. Now, the
exactly.
other thing that they still say, "Oh, it's not gonna do that," but that's the way it looks in the bill, that it like, if you have to use your birth certificate as your proof, well, it says if that doesn't match your name on your current, picture ID, you're not eligible to vote. Well, what woman that ever got married has the same name that's on her birth certificate?
Yeah, and if you've
It's
been married a couple of times,
yeah,
then
exactly.
what?
So,
I was watching one of the news stations today, and they were talking about it, and one of the ladies on there said, my birth certificate has one name, my passport has another name, and my driver's license has a third name.
yeah.
So she's got three different things, and they all got different names right now.
What about people, in the witness protection program that have legal name changes? I mean, I
Yeah,
mean, that's what I'm
exactly.
saying is you're creating a whole lot of problems to solve a problem that's not there. But
But see, but the poll just says, "Are you in favor of voter ID?" Yes. Okay, well, I guess technically, just based on that one single question, I'm part of that 90% that the polls say are in favor of voter ID. But it's just that's not all that's in the bill.
no, it's
There's
not.
more than that in the bill.
We already have voter ID. Every time I voted, I had to show my driver's license. When's
You
the last
know,
you
and
you
it's
did?
all and it's already against the law for non-citizens to vote in an election. Already
Yeah,
against the law. That's already against the law. I posted something about the Save America Act on my Facebook page. And one of my friends said something about, well, illegals should not be allowed to vote. And I said, it's already against the law. And I actually cited the US statute to show where non-citizens not allowed to vote. And they said, well, we need to pass this to enforce it. Whoa, wait a second. This is a federal law. Pam Bondi is the attorney general. Are you saying that Pam Bondi, the attorney general, is not capable of enforcing existing federal law? We've got to pass another law
well,
to
here
enforce a law that's already on the books. Bullshit.
here's the other issue that I don't understand, and, you're a Reagan Republican. Why is the federal government interfering in the process that the Constitution gives to the states? There is no provision for the federal government to intervene in elections, period. Not there. It's all the states, and every state has
Well,
laws.
I will tell you from a Reagan Republican standpoint,
Uh,
there is a national issue as far as should we it's kind of like interstate commerce. We don't necessarily want states individually regulating interstate commerce. Nebraska shouldn't have a different set of rules than Kansas does as far as stuff that comes across the interstate. And I would say that from a national standpoint, only US citizens should vote in elections. And I have no problem with that being a federal law that says only US citizens should vote in elections. And I really have no problem either with saying that the states should ensure that newly registered people, I mean, right now you still have to say you have to just basically make a statement that you're a citizen. You have to swear an oath that you're an American citizen to register to vote today. So
mhm.
if you are not a citizen and you say you are and you register, then you've basically perjured yourself, and there's
Right.
that's a crime. So, okay, it's against the law already. And I really don't have a problem with saying, okay, well, today, if you register to vote, because it's mostly going to be 18-year-olds, hopefully, and their parents probably still have access to their birth certificate, so they can get them pretty quickly. You have to have your birth certificate to get your real ID driver's license now. You have to have a birth certificate to get a passport. While it's fresh on your mind, so to speak, and before you've moved 10 times, and you're not 60 years old, get your birth certificate out. But after that, grandfather everybody else in. And yeah, as we old folks eventually die off and the new folks have shown their birth certificates to register to vote, that problem will go away if it even is a problem. I personally don't think it's even a problem,
It's not a problem, no.
because I just don't think that, if I was living in another country, and we've talked about this before, if I was living in another country illegally, the last thing I want to do is stick my head up and say, I'm voting. I'm not allowed to.
So
I'm gonna give you my name, my address, my fake social security number, and I'm just gonna invite you to kick me out of
2
the country.
years ago, I was in Belize City during the middle of parliamentary elections. How successfully do you think I could have interjected
Exactly.
my vote in? It's just, again, it goes back to the whole fact that he can't admit that he lost the election.
That's all this is. This is 2020 election.
And I mean, and the answer is simple. A lot of people just stayed home in 2016 because they thought, what harm could Donald Trump do? Well, and 4 years later, well, yeah, he can do a hell of a lot of harm. And they turned out in mass and voted him out. But then after 4 years of him not being around, a lot of them forgot how terrible he was. And they like, oh, what harm can he do? And they stayed home
Well,
or voted for him.
and you're in a better position to comment on this than I am, but I got the impression that a lot of the Democrats were just so disenfranchised from Joe Biden and then from Kamala, how this election was just sort of given over. The nomination was given to her
Well,
after. Did that really fire the base up to just say, man, I can't wait to come vote for Harris?
it wasn't that because, there were a lot of Republicans at the time were saying, it's illegal what they're doing. Well, no, it's not. I mean, it used to historically be presidential nominees were not chosen by primaries. They were chosen in the
At a
convention.
convention. Yeah.
Usually took hundreds of
All the power
ballots to get somewhere. So
and all the power
legally, it was
brokers picked them. Power brokers
uh,
picked them.
yeah. So it was a sticky wicket because Joe was slipping, but Kamala was.
Joe had already slipped, buddy. Joe had already
I,
slipped.
I mean,
He went off that mountain. He went off that mountain 3 years earlier.
yeah, but I mean, but Kamala wasn't the choice. It was just, but there was no other way. We didn't have time to
Yeah.
do a whole set of primaries to try to pick somebody. It was just the choice we got. And even then, I'm still going on the record, right? Say now, Kamala Harris would be a better president right now than what we've got.
Yeah, I would say that's true too. I mean, at this
Because the
point in
worst
time,
you can get is
what Trump has done to this country through the tariff taxes, through the war in Iran,
yeah.
just the being an asshole, I have to go along with you. I mean,
The
it's
worst you would have gotten is some incompetence, but also there was restraint because the opposition house is in Congress. But now we've got a daily attack on our Constitution by a guy that Congress won't say no to.
yeah,
So,
that's true.
it literally every day we're wondering, well, why are we here? And how much longer can the court system hold out? Because,
Yep.
on a regular basis, he's appointing more and more judges to the lower courts. It's just, can we survive till the end of this term? And then, he hot mic moment the other day, he said at a fundraiser, we have to have the SAVE Act or we're not going to win the midterms. So he's
Mhm.
saying it's a weapon.
Mhm.
It's not about saving election integrity.
No,
It's about
not at all.
positioning to win. And then we've got the wholesale gerrymandering going on in every state.
Yeah. And
It's like,
and you know good well, there's just no way that the states would be prepared whatever the changes in the Save America Act are, no way they can get them implemented between now and November. I mean, November is 8 months away, 7 months away.
Well, I mean, candidate qualifications are coming up, what, next month? Early,
Yeah,
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 early March,
yeah.
May.
It's just
So,
impossible.
yeah, and then, the first election happens in August. That's less than 6 months away. And then in November is not much further. So, yeah.
I listen to James Carville's podcast, and I'm not a huge fan of James Carville. That son of a bitch makes me laugh. I'll have to say that.
No, well,
He has one he has one crazy Cajun. But his last podcast was that he thinks that Trump's going to quit next year because once he loses the House and the Senate, and he knows that his day is going to be filled with nothing but impeachment hearings left and right, and he can't get anything done, can't get anything passed because Congress is going to be coming down, is that Trump's just going to quit and go home.
only if Vance will give him a pardon on the way out.
Yeah, oh yeah, Trump will pardon himself,
Well, that's still a debatable tactic, but
just
think
like he said,
I think he could get one from Vance.
that he could withdraw from NATO without Congress's approval, and he
Yeah.
may be right about that. He may be right about that. Again, these are things that are so unthought of that nobody ever thought to pass a law. The Senate has to approve treaties, but does the Senate have to approve breaking a treaty? If the president breaks the treaty, does the Senate has to have to concur in that? And that's never been tried before.
Well, but I
So
mean, we've been breaking treaties for 200 some years. So, I mean, and the most current one is what you mentioned earlier.
withdrawal from NATO would be a big one, though.
No, no. Well, I mean, but we had a treaty agreement in place that we have yet to honor, but we were supposed to go to Ukraine's aid if they were attacked. That was in exchange for them giving up their nuclear weapons, which they did. We've not honored that agreement, you know. So let's don't even get into the whole Native American history.
Yeah, Greg's already gonna be mad because we've run way late. Greg's
I
already gonna
know,
be
but
mad at
it's
us.
he can chop them up into
He'll
different
figure it
segments.
out. He'll figure it
Yeah.
out.
But it probably is time to sign off. So yeah, we appreciate everyone tuning in again. Again, if you like what you're hearing, like us on YouTube or other platforms, hit the bell as they say, and definitely tune in again next week because there's still gonna be plenty to talk about.
Be plenty to talk about.
Yeah. So Tony, appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yep.
Have a good
And
week.
yep, everyone have a great evening and we'll
See you
see you
next
next
week.
time.
Thank
Thanks.
you.